Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording is started, and by participating in SASS, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which I'll post in the chat. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We will now get started with a few announcements. I will pass it to Maria, our announcement witch.
Hello, witches. It's like the end of the month. When did that happen? It's the end of October. So tomorrow's the 21st, and that's when the foundations and guild members can get together and do our spellcraft. We have um, boundaries themed this month is the flavor of the season of the October. So that is what we're doing tomorrow. Always love Witchwork Circle. And yeah, like stay tuned. We're sport team has a meeting tomorrow, and we have like another new exciting announcement coming up. But we need to just talk tomorrow to finalize a few things. So we'll be posting an announcement early in the week for everybody, for the witches in the courtyard and all of our members. So, yeah, we're still kind of getting back from the convergence. I feel like I'm still getting kind of back and been like taking it slow. I'm definitely feeling like hibernation. So we're taking the pace a little bit slower, welcoming a bunch of new witches into the courtyard. It was an exciting week for us. Um, so community.brightanddark.org is where it's at. And yeah, thanks. The end.
Ta-da! Look at how cozy this sass is, right? Usual, like, okay, so also at the same time, think of the last 5 days that you've experienced, right? Can we have a moment of silence for our cousins who are really struggling today? And that's why this is such a cozy uh sass. Because you guys know it takes a lot to miss out on a sass to choose to like not come. So like I've got tears coming to my eyes about that. So let's get weird about it. Give give them a breath. I know I've had quite a morning already. Like ran out of propane for the first time in the middle of making coffee. And then I was like, okay, well, what am I going to eat for breakfast? So I found some meatballs that Kim made that are amazing. And so I was like, I'm going to just heat it up in the microwave. And then I blew the breaker. And then I was like sitting there with my cold meatballs and my like French press of grounds with no hot coffee. Yeah, it was just this whole morning. But it's great. Like it's all a part of it. And no harm done. I know exactly uh how much time it go takes to go through like a 5 gallon propane tank, which is great data. I got a lot of great data today, guys, that hit real deep so that I don't forget that. And I appreciate that. Last night as I was going to sleep, I just was like, I don't know, I had a moment. I shared it with the guild. This like idea of uh so let me see if I can set the stage for this. So you guys hear us talk about inward turn a lot. And what we're talking about is the season in a witch's cycle where they go through an introspective process. And sometimes this can be different for witches. It's different depending on if you're in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and it's different kind of depending on how you connect to your magic. But a lot of witches experience this during the winter months, right? And usually between October and about December is where we do this very deep introspective work. The problem is that most of the time we end up busying ourselves too much and taking on too much to be able to actually do this in an effective way that is expansive. And then we all of a sudden December's here and we're like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore. And life is awful. And that fun song that we all sing. So when you start establishing your own magical practice and your own traditions and ceremonial workings that support your unique connection, uh, this very common experience is something that you can be very intentional about. And it's almost like we go into this like cocoon and tend to isolate a little bit more and not want to engage, or engagement with like others and masking is very heavy during this time. It's very, very heavy. And so I had this like idea about like how to explain that process in like intentionally creating a cocoon for yourself, meaning not that you are protecting yourself from anything, but you are creating intentional positive containment for a very specific experience for an extended period of time. Does that make sense? Right? So if you, it's like brainwashing yourself, kind of like forcing yourself into a single, or your brain into where you want your baseline to be for an extended period of time so that it reorients your system to seek that uh, and to recognize what is like. I think I used the analogy of like uh choosing to refrain from entertainment that engages your fight or flight experience, right? That could be all kinds of different stuff. And you can put your boundaries anywhere with that, but choosing not to do that for the intention of being able to reorient yourself back to peace so that you're not in this constant state of fight or flight. It makes it to where you know the difference between manufactured stress, right? Which is the from the entertainment, and what is real stress that you need to engage with as a part of your incarnation. And in what ways are you actually, maybe unintentionally, adding to the cocktail more than what like your system can manage effectively, right? Does that make sense? Are you guys with me? Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, I had commented on your post like immediately after because I had just had this same conversation with my husband, probably at the same time you were thinking about it. So, because I was like, I've got to stop getting in bed and treating myself to like an hour of TikTok before I fall asleep, right? Because I love TikTok so much. I feel like I connect with people and I learn things. So I'm not bashing TikTok because I love it, but I get sucked in and then I get an hour less of sleep every night. And I've also been finding that like I get up and go to the bathroom a lot, middle of the night. I'm 50. So I do. And then I check my phone, like in case I missed anything. Ma'am, I don't need to check my phone. at 1:30, 2 in the morning. There is nothing that I can do about anything in that moment. And then sometimes I'll get sucked into it again, and it's really affecting my sleep. So I had just had the conversation with my husband that instead of doing that, I have piles of books that I want to get through. And so um instead of treating myself to TikTok in that way, I'm going to, do it through the day, but at bedtime, it's going to be replaced with books that I really want to read and that I want to finish because I've got like 5 going because as I do. Uh and I think I read for like 10 minutes and that was it. I was out and I had to work hard not to check it in the middle of the night after I went to the bathroom, but I consciously didn't. And I was always able to fall right back asleep. Whereas before, if I check my phone, it takes me like an hour to fall back asleep. So, in order to enter that rest period that we are entering, I have to change how I approach that bedtime ritual, if you will. And it's so funny because then, of course, as I picked up my phone to clear any messages so that I can lay down and focus on my book, that's what came up, your heartbeat post. So it's like right exactly the same thing that I'd been experiencing. So I'm gonna mute. That's all I had to add.
Hello. Um, I want to say a lot of things about what you both have said, but my brain is not super organized right now, so forgive me. It's the moon, you know. Um, so, uh, I have also um been struggling with being on my phone a lot more. I noticed that I I obviously have a very deep desire to learn things, like the same way you were talking about, Stephanie, of like I learn and connect with people on TikTok. Um, and uh I'm starting to realize that I need to structure my own learning because I have such resistance and fear of institutions that and I have this belief that learning can't be fun that I'm trying to challenge. But on the opposite side of the coin, I've actually been diving deeper into my relationship with fear in my cocoon because I think that fear actually has a lot to do with my highest self. My highest self has been like appearing to me lately as like a dark clown, like a shadow clown. Like I had this image one time as I was trying to go to bed of uh like a shadow beneath my bed, but it had this huge smile and it was like bright white glowing eyes. And so my highest self I call iridescence, but their nickname is eerie for a reason because I think that there's fun in being afraid, fun in being um uh also fun in playing the clown and being the fearful thing on the other side of the coin. So I was like a haunt actor for a long time. And I used to think of that as like kind of like a mean thing almost. Like I used to scare people. But at the same time it was super empowering at times. And yeah. Um the also the cocoon. Okay, so I am like in a double cocoon. I am cocooning like in my life right now. Like I am going through my Saturn return. I know I talk about this all the time. I'm not going to shut up until it's over though. So this is just going to keep coming up. And so I know nobody told me to shut up, but my brain was like someone's going to say it. They're not here, but so I am goo currently. That's why a lot of my thoughts are I'm struggling to like put them into a pattern because uh like I am currently in the process of dissolving and letting go of the past of who Ocean thought they were going to be in order to make space, which I'm experiencing as a sort of like void for the possibilities of alignment, rather than trying really hard to fill that void with someone or something else. And so I find that sitting in this dark space, there is this low hum of like dread, like sometimes that just seems to be in the background. And so I've been watching horror movies with Ezra to like allow myself to experience the fear in like a way that makes it like something I can interact with and like process and stuff. But allowing myself to actually feel it has been like, it's funny because I used to watch horror movies and I would try to just hold my breath almost. Like I wasn't allowing myself to actually like feel the art of it because it is an art. And art is supposed to make you feel different things. And so uh like allowing myself to feel it is making it um is like I'm seeing it as a process of like integration of that aspect of myself that I have either shamed or rejected for like most of my life. So that's where the thought train ends. Um yeah, okay, go ahead, Renee.
Oh, hard today for some reason. I am also working on my sleep, and my sleep is never great to begin with, but my husband, a few days ago, he's at work and he's like, I think I'm having like sympathetic sleep, you know, issues. And I was like, no, it's just the full moon. That's why, um, but I I forgot what I was gonna tell everybody. But I will say this, like I've worked in some like charity haunted houses, and it's super duper fun to scare people. Like it just is. And I mean, and I think that's what they're there for too, right? Like they know it's like actually a safe environment. And I watch a ton of horror movies. I think everybody already knows that. But also I worked for a special effects company for a while. So like I I don't think I can get into them the same way other people do. Like my suspension of disbelief is, I think, not the same. Like the only kind of scary movies I enjoy are ones that are reliant on the story and not on special effects. So, and I did have something I really wanted to share, but since I can't think of what it is right now, I'm going to pass it off to Jen Marie.
I lowered my hand and everything. 3 years. 3 years it took me to figure that shit out. I'm so proud of myself though. I did it. I'm doing it. Uh yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna take this further. All right. Can we take this further? The cocoon. Okay. So as I'm thinking about because I don't believe that I get that information. Even when I get information for you guys, I don't believe that that doesn't apply to me as well in some way, right? I wouldn't be able to interpret it if I didn't either experience it myself or like it applies to me in some way, right? And so I was thinking about like, okay, so if I were to create the perfect cocoon for myself right now over the course of the next few months, what would I limit my exposure to in order to bring the most expansion to where I feel and believe that I'm headed, right? So That is a chunk. This is going to be such a neurodivergent conversation, by the way, guys. So, like, put those boots on. So there's that part, right? And knowing that that narrative magic that I don't remember which meeting I was talking about, but applying that as well, narrative magic, intentionally creating your own narrative that supports what you believe is real in your life and engage with that more than engaging with the cappy pappy, right? Or the what you're not wanting to engage with. Okay. So that's another chunk of it. Right. And so when I'm asking myself, if I looked back on the harvest this last year, if I looked back from February when Kim and Wit and Ocean and fucking Heather and I got together and did this spell that looped my ass down here, and we weren't expecting that at all, but it makes sense. But anyway, so we did a working to create physical community for us, all of us, right? How do we do that together? But we set the wheels in motion magically and let it go. And so the purpose of that space is to do what we do at the convergences in actually engaging from a place of connection and creating contrast for witches to be able to actually have time to sit with themselves unapologetically and be accepted by others so that when they go home, they can start making decisions that are more in alignment with that. So they have that contrast, right? Right. We talk about it, that's what we're doing intentionally throughout that weekend. But that's what we're wanting to do with this location, this space, so that witches can go to in order to reorient in some way. And so in order to do that, those that live there have to be living that connection focused lifestyle as wholly as possible so that becomes the like nature of that space. Does that make sense? Right? So they're actually practicing what they're preaching, right? Okay, so all that being said, knowing that we started that working and everything that has happened from then until now has been the unfolding of that path. So that place already exists and I'm heading in that direction, but the perfect cocoon, I literally have the opportunity right now to limit my system's exposure to the influence of the big Cappy Pappy. And that's crazy. That's awesome. That's wonderful and like rare. Can you guys say that you are in a space to be able to do that? Can you hear me? Okay. My computer, I'm doing the EMP thing, guys, and my computer's like sending a bunch of signals at me. Uh,
Your screen is black, but we can hear you.
really?
Or is it black for everybody else or just me?
For me, it's frozen with a great face. You're like very thoughtful face. There we go. Now I
Man,
can see
You're
you.
back.
it's so strange how that happens. What was I talking about?
Living a
Right.
connection-based lifestyle.
Like, did you like if that's not validation that I'm on the right track, I don't fucking know what is. Like, as soon as I say it, my computer like starts responding and everything like it's some like powerful, profound like revelation or something. Like that's it feels like that's important so that I can do what I can to reorient my system so hard to what our goal is that it loops things around. Does that make sense? And so now I'm starting to, because the shit that I feel called to release at the, I'm doing a Halloween ritual, a ceremony where I am releasing um, beliefs that were handed down to me by my ancestors, right? Beliefs like I need to uh, have a male choose me as a partner in order to be safe from other men. Like that's a belief that was taught to me by my family, right? And that is not a way that I want to engage with my life anymore. Or even things like my practice and my reality needs to be somehow validated by a man in order for it to be real. And I have to justify or explain myself to make sense to them in order for it to be real. Like that's something that uh, is within me that I do not align with. And I didn't know it until I went through this process, that this catalyst that I've been experiencing, right? And so for me to be releasing those kinds of things, I don't know how more obvious it can, how more obvious it could be that maybe like what would happen? What would that look like? And that means like not engaging with those that are heavily influenced by the Cappy Pappy, which means most AMABs, which is interesting as well. And a whole other conversation that I'm probably going to catch heat for in some way. If that was a clumsy way of saying that, I don't know what to do, but that's just like, go ahead, Ocean.
Um, so I um I wanted to bring more clarity to what I said, if I can, because the reason that I'm engaging in a relationship with my fear is because of a similar concept of believing that I'm unsafe unless I have a partner. Um, but it's also because I am I believe inherently as a human afraid of what I don't know, afraid of what is unfamiliar. Capitalism is familiar. It's not fun, but it's familiar. And so as I navigate my own path to living in a connection-based community, I believe I will encounter a lot of fear. Because it's strange, but even when people are supporting me, I'm still feeling fear of like, what are the strings attached to this? Or are they gonna get mad at me later? Or like, did I respond correctly? Or like, should I have even asked at all? Like there's so many fear-based questions that come up around connection for me. Um, because I learned through social conditioning and trauma that most people and spaces are unsafe for me. Um, and so, like, almost to the point of becoming sort of an agoraphobe, not like, an official diagnosis, but I wouldn't, for years now, I've struggled to even go to like the grocery store or anything, which is, it's not nothing. Like, the grocery store is a sensory nightmare. I'm sure we can all agree to that. Um, but I don't want to feel like I'm making decisions out of fear. And so I'm repairing my relationship with what it's like to feel fear and then come out safely on the other side. And that's the way I'm sort of cultivating um safety with the unknown. Um and uh I'm starting with like movies and stuff, but eventually I will be very specifically like going to the store and regulating through the experience and then coming out to my car and being like, see, I'm safe and we got through that and we got ourselves a little snack and everything's like good. Um because I'm also being like my guides keep telling me to celebrate and I'm like I'm in the pits right now. Like they're like, yeah, let's throw a party. There's not anything else to do. Like it feels so weird because under capitalism where I'm at right now, I should be like sad maybe. I don't know. I don't want to guess. But I should not feel the way that I feel if I were still operating under capitalism. I shouldn't feel excited or happy, but I do feel those things. And then I get confused because I'm like, wait, I can't see anything going well. Um, but I like something that Jen Marie said. I think it was this year sometime that your guides start the celebration when the decision has been made, not when they don't wait for it to show up in physical reality. They're like, oh good, you made the decision, let's fucking party until the sun rises and you can actually, it like illuminates everything that you've been calling in the darkness. That feels like a good place to end that. Okay, go ahead, Maria.
Hello, everyone. So I wanted to kind of maybe share just my thoughts that have come up, my perspective. I feel that I'm really good at this time of year is is where I shine. I love cocooning. Uh, I think one of the reasons my ex-husband divorced me was because he used to come in on the weekends and say, "What are you doing today? What did you plan?" And I said, "This is what I planned." And I'd be just lying in bed, like doing my thing. And I'm like, "This was my plan. I planned to do nothing." Or I plan to just do whatever I want. Like, if I want to go out, go out. And for whatever reason, my system, my whole life, it like really is designed to be able to like rest and cocoon. I some of you know I have like a nest in my witchy room. Like I needed a separate resting place that wasn't my bed in case I needed to rest here. um, but where my flavor of busyness comes in is more around like tasks. I used I can't go out until the house is clean, or like if I have somewhere to go, all of these things need to get done. And I'm kind of changing my relationship with that in like preparation, because like today it's 70 degrees out and it's like beautiful and I have the opportunity to like be outside. This room is a disaster. Like this room is a complete mess. And so there was like anxiety feeling of wanting to like do this busy likeness and not go. But I have been working on shifting my relationship with that and knowing that winter like is a time for rest, but it's also a time where when it's really cold out, I do also get I feel more aligned to do like those things inside, like different house projects, um, stuff like that. So that is where like I get pinged about it. Like it's interesting, my like journey, and I know everyone's at a different place, but I really am at a place and like I stop and check in and I'm like, you know, are you dissociating? Do you really feel this way? But I really do think I do. I really feel it deeply, like that it's lovely to feel that I'm this divine being and I'm like just deserving of everything just because I'm here, like for no other reason. And I believe that about all of us. And I really do feel that way. And I'm human. I have like other feelings and other experiences. So, like, but I really feel like I do sit in that space, or at least I'm sitting in that space right now. And like to be on the edge of cronehood is also fucking awesome because I don't give a fuck what people think about me anymore. Like I do, right? Like I'm just saying that like I don't like fuck you. Like I'm not like I do care, but I don't. I also don't care. Like there's just an element about that like I unabashedly like walk around the grocery store in my full pajamas, like, and I might have feelings about it, but ultimately I just gonna do like whatever. And just the feeling of that has been very freeing. I wasn't always that way. Um, but and part of it is probably finding, you know, community, right? Because when you have community and you have it, right? Because we're all seeking it and craving it and we're craving acceptance. And when you have it, the people that don't align with you, like that power dynamic, I think changes. And so maybe that's part of kind of what shifted for me because um yeah, like I want to be where the weirdos are, I'm not interested in keeping up and it's yeah, but so I feel like they're definitely and I'm being called to like dig into also like the hardest part of my shadow work, which is my relationship with my brother. But I'm getting pinged about it like super hard, where like I'm seeing his name on signs and shit as like I'm driving. And I'm like, fuck you, like, I don't want to. But I get pinged about it like every so often. And so whatever that is, and yeah, so it's interesting. Like this season for me, I do lean into rest. And I do lean into it hard. I mean, I'd rather be sleeping, to be honest with you, but here we are. um, so, but it's like it is an interesting time because, and I think Ezra like says sometimes too that they feel like energized by the dark, and I do too. Like I get a bit of yeah, of a little bit of spark, like the dark, the nighttime for me has always been a time of like, what are we gonna do? It's dark out. Let's like get into it. So I like look forward to it. I like one of the things, like during I know we're still in COVID times, but during like the deep COVID times, I mean, besides the fact that, people were getting sick and that completely sucked, there was a lot of things I liked about it. Like the whole world shut down and like we didn't have to go anywhere and it took out the hustle and bustle. And I was like, oh, like I preferred that. And I do still have like this 9 to 5 job, which like there's something there to that um I'm still kind of working out and it's interesting. I am engaging with it differently, like energetically, it is very different from how I used to engage, but there is something there too, like when you're, and that's hard. I find like that really, really hard when you're wanting to cocoon and like, right, we have like these jobs, or maybe you have kids and different like responsibilities in that way. But the job thing can be an interesting, yeah, that's all. I don't know who is next, but Renee is back and Ocean has their hand up. Renee, you think Ocean? Is it Renee? Okay, Renee. And I'm on my phone, so it's weird.
I'm on my phone and my phone makes it all weird too. So a couple of things Maria said, like one thing about post COVID, like I feel like we've all collectively decided we don't have to wear bras all the time anymore, which is like a big deal for me. Like it's like it feels weird, but also feels super liberating. And I'm waiting for the day I get confronted about it, and I'm waiting for the day a man tells me I should wear a bra so I can tell him first. But also when you said just going out in your pajamas this whole entire month, um I bought Rich and I these super comfy like skeleton pajamas that also look like a costume, and we like them so much. We both have like 3 pairs of these pajamas, and I didn't mean to go out in public in them, but I was driving and Rich called me and he's like, "Hey, can you stop by the store and pick up this prescription for me?" So I went in there and I was like a little, I mean, I love a costume, but I was feeling like a little self-conscious about it because it was like the end of September. It wasn't even October yet. And I was standing in line, and then this elderly gentleman got in line behind me, and he's like, "You look fabulous." And I was like, "Oh," I was like trying to explain why I was wearing them. He goes, "You don't have to explain yourself." He's like, "You don't have to explain it to anybody." And I was like, "You're right. I don't, do I?" And he's like, "No, you look fantastic." He's like, "I'm a dermatologist. I'm an esthetician." He's like, I can tell somebody that's got some personality. It was so funny, but like weirdly validating too, because usually I totally don't care. But just to have somebody be like, "You don't have to explain yourself." It's like, you don't have to explain yourself. So anyway, that was just like one of the fun little, because I hardly go out in public either, and it's like most of the time it's like to pick up it's something I can't avoid doing, and I can't take the dogs, like pick up a prescription. And so like whenever something like that happens, it just makes my life way easier. But anyway, Ocean.
I get so much like dopamine or serotonin or whatever the like happy chemical is when strangers say nice things to me in public. It's become a sync for me, actually. I know I'm in the correct place if somebody says, I like your hair, because I realize that when that happens, I feel very aligned with where I'm at. Um, like I had to walk to a doctor's appointment because our car was in the shop the other day, and I was kind of like annoyed about it, like as I was walking up to the hospital, and I was like, uh, just like also it was a new doctor, so I wasn't really sure where the place I was supposed to be at. And then from out of the literal sky, someone goes, I love your hair. And I look up, there's like a balcony where somebody's like smoking a cigarette. And I was like, thanks, man. Like, it was so random, but it made me feel so much better about where I was at. Um, Also, with the COVID cocoon, I really resonated with that too. That like not only did like people start healing during COVID, I know a lot of people got sick, but a lot of people's mental health started like improving to the point where some people didn't go back to their regular jobs. And then um nature started improving. And I think about that a lot, about how like all the projections of how bad climate change is are based on like capitalism and continuing to follow that sort of like system, whereas like in a community based setting we would be sharing like rides places, we would be caravanning to the grocery store together so none of us had to like brave that alone, like we would be staying in, working from home would be way more of an option um than it is, especially because a lot of people, like I keep getting this over and over, but like, and I'm not very studied up on like political theory or anything like that, but uh I keep getting like we are the means of production and so we must seize ourselves. um, that keeps coming up for me, because most people are like, well, if we didn't have capitalism, then what would we do? But like we are doing a lot of jobs that wouldn't exist under capitalism. But then if we were actually like growing our own foods and actually like creating microcosms in our neighborhoods of community, then like most of like the idea of like uh I wouldn't say that paper money would go away altogether, but I think there would be a lot less need for us to try and like buy what we need, but rather like learn what we need, or create connections that support a part of our life that we cannot or are not interested in learning about. Um, yeah, so I think I had something else to say, but I didn't write it down, so that's on me. Go ahead, Renee.
Um, when you said, if someone like if you're in a community setting and someone needs a ride, like, and some of the things you're describing, what it actually reminds me of is being a teenager. And when we were all teenagers, or at least in my, friend group, it was like two people had a car, like my house you could hang out at, like everybody shared all their music, we shared our clothes, like, and it's like it was great. I mean, it was so fun. It was fantastic. And there was no, I don't know, it was really like it was so community oriented, and I mean, like, my little group of weirdos or whatever, like we were all into the same stuff. But yeah, it and um I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of, and I think we've talked about this before, like if you had a library, we could like check out a drill, instead of, there seems to be more of kind of almost like this trade community where yeah, like if you live in a community, a close community, like everybody doesn't need a bandsaw, like one person needs a bandsaw, and if you had like a place where people could borrow things, um instead of buy things for little projects around the house or whatever, it makes so much more sense to me. um but but yeah, it's funny too, because I remember like my late teens, early 20s, like we did a lot of communal living too, which I have a soft spot for that. Like I always thought that was really fun, which I don't know if it would be as fun as an adult, but all living in the same house, but but yeah, I miss that kind of, that aspect of like all for one and one for all, and I feel like you can like really live it when you're a teenager, and I think it'd be really fun to revisit it again. So I don't think anybody has their hand up, but I'm gonna hop off.
I spent 10 years managing community houses for artists specifically. Well, that's what we called ourselves before we could call ourselves witches. And it's awesome. I mean, there's problems, and that was before I did like big shadow work and never had that as a requirement or whatever for living there. So even without that, it was still a lot just better. We actually did things, and we actually, did the grocery shopping together, and the yard work was something we did collectively. And, we didn't sit around watching TV at night. We, passed around a poetry book of Rumi and had someone else with a hand puppet, like trying to keep up with them and doing things like that. Uh, Coming up with creative games. I remember one time someone had a like one of those bouncy medicine ball things, those bouncy yoga ball things, is a yoga ball chair. and a bean bag, and we all ended up making this completely random like game with bean bags bouncing off of this yoga ball, and had tournaments, and there were so many people involved. By like within a week there was teams, and it was just that kind of stuff just naturally happens, and it's so much more fulfilling and rewarding than this nuclear family thing that we've all been sold. Like, man, it's been quite the contrast coming back to where I used to live like that. That's how I lived. I lived communally until I moved to Alaska. And then now coming back, and, Kim's house is a beacon of like, everybody comes over to Kim's house. And so it's this very social community kind of feel here. And damn, I miss it a lot. Like a lot, a lot, a lot.
Yeah, I just want to play croquet with everybody that's in this meeting right now.
In inflatable dinosaur mounted like costumes. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Or at least a really fucking cool hat, right? Like one of those derby hats that's all like wild and stacked, or like one of those crazy like church hats. And with this next sun, that's my manifestation goals with this next sun is a space to play croquet with all of you in inflatable costumes or hats. Like, do what you want. But okay, go ahead, Maria.
So I feel called to kind of say this and like explore this a little bit. Although we are living under the Cappy Pappy, I find that I don't want to be waiting. I want like I have my dreams and things that, but I don't want to be waiting for something to change before I can do what I want. That's not like my style. And so I just feel like even though there are places and communities that like that already or close, and that if that's like really pinging you, I encourage you to go out if you want to, of course, like in your community. Like I've been doing the Comet, I've been following the Comet, and I met the coolest fucking people at the lake, right? Like someone let me use their binoculars. Like I was like, oh, like someone's like, yeah, it won't come for 80,000 years. I'm like, well, if I'm incarnated, then maybe I'll see it again. And they were like, well, you will, you probably will be. And I was like, ooh, like, it was just like having cool conversations. I'm like, stargazing people are cool people. And so like I've been kind of feeling that. And yeah, I just like, you know, what do you do now? And I just, yeah, like I know we talk kind of about the way that things are and why, but the world has changed a lot over the last couple of years, especially. I mean, it's always changing, but like I just find that the shift is happening. Like it's here. There's more to come, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's there. I just feel like don't the energy of that energetics you put into like I can't do, and I'm not saying that's what anyone's doing, but like I can't do that yet because I need this to happen, or I need this person to be president, I need this to politically, I need like I don't want, like I'm here now, like I'm existing, I'm living, I'm incarnated right at this moment. We all are for this now moment. And so like what am I going to do now? Like, what can I do right now? So yeah, just throwing that out there. Thanks.
I love that, Maria. Like, yes, 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 yes. it totally wraps back into that cocoon thing of like, what do you got to do to get to where this is your baseline, this is your norm, and not that like, and engaging with cool people is like, I don't know. I am one of those people that I want to practice radical like hope, you know? And so what do I got to do to practice that radical hope, right? And I know that when I engage with all of you, I leave our conversations feeling more empowered. I leave these spaces feeling like what we share here is more real than, the what is generally like accepted. I don't know how to explain it. And that's what I'm talking about, is that like intentional cocoon thing. And I'm going to be working on that. Like, what does that mean for me? What does an intentional cocoon mean for me? Because come spring, this is going to be a very physical thing. Like, it's going to start showing up this year. And I know that in order to attract that, I need to embody that. And so what does that look like? And that is for me what my, like, what are you doing about it thing. And so it's interesting. It's like a reverse cult. Like, what would happen if I only engaged with people in this, like within the app, so that that becomes my like foundation in reality. So when I engage with those that are still deeply engaged in the big Cappy Pappy, my reality isn't shaking because I've cultified my fucking brain with like a very specific perspective of connection and a very specific kind of communicating. And it makes, I don't know, it doesn't make me the sun, but it reorients things and shifts that weight of reality. Anyway, go ahead, Maria.
I just wanted to share one. I thought of you yesterday, one thing that just brought me hope. Yesterday, so I've been going to this lake that's about 10 minutes from my house to do stargazing and different things. But yesterday I went there during the day to I'm like really trying to take in as much foliage as I can before the leaves fall off. Like I'm like immersing myself in the with the trees. And there were a bunch of older male presenting people at the lake with their remote control boats, like these remote control little like toy boats, but that they like spent all this time crafting, and they were like playing with their boats in the lake. And I was like, this is so great. Like just this group of men got together and they're like playing with their boats in the lake. And for some that like really pinged like hope for me. And I was like, I don't know, like if you saw this gentleman in the supermarket, you would never think like he's invested in like crafting this model boat, and the group of them are going to get together and, just drop their boats in the lake and use their little remotes. I don't know. It was so great. And it was like a moment where I felt so hopeful, like in that moment, like watching that. That was all. Thank you, Renee.
Um, when cocoons are mentioned, I just think about um when we were kids, my sister and I, we would like crawl in between the mattresses on the bed and watch movies, and just that feeling of being like mildly squished, like how good it felt. And my mom would get so mad. She'd be like, "You're gonna suffocate in there." Like everything. My mom, we call her worst case scenario mom because everything ended in like death and dismemberment. Um, but why is it so fun to have a little cocoon? Like it's so fun. Like the end of my couch, when we were looking for couches, I'm like, oh, I like that because it's got this little weird area. And the guy's like, that's called the cuddler. I'm like, the cuddler? Of course I'm gonna buy the couch that has the cuddler. But and then when Maria said she has like a little nest, like it's so fun to just have like a little little weird cavey area, like even if it's just with, curtains or whatever. But yeah, I think like in the future, yes, like any house like should, you know, if you could build an extra you know, little spot to have a little secret cocoon. Um, and also it's like secret libraries. Like, why is it fun to have little secret areas in houses? There's all those memes about if you're a millionaire, you're doing it wrong if you don't have like a spinning door that leads to a secret library. But I love all that stuff. But yes, like if you've never crawled in between the mattresses of your bed before, like just try it because it feels awesome. I think Alicia's next.
Oh, hello. How's everybody? I was just gonna say I love this conversation for lots of reasons. Um, sorry, so I don't forget that I think I honestly benefited. I hate to say this because in some ways it's like I feel like I'm benefiting from other people's tragedy. But my family and we benefited so much more from the pandemic in so many ways, like meeting you guys and everything else. I mean, all that came out of having that pandemic, having the world shut down, for 2 weeks. So I am grateful. In fact, my daughter and I were talking the other day, and she's like, "Is it bad that I kind of want another pandemic?" I'm like, "I know what you mean," but and then like with Maria going outside, it is so fun for me to start connecting with people who are walking outside at night for the first time and looking up and seeing stars. I'm loving this because there's so many people on like the Facebook pages for like the Northern Lights, and they're like, "What is this glowing orb in the sky?" And everyone's like, "Oh, that's the Pleiades," or "That's the Seven Sisters," or "Oh, that's," and they're like, "What is this group of stars over here?" Like all these people are coming out of the woodworks, and they're like, it's like during the pandemic when they stopped working and they got out of their routine and they walked outside and they're like, "Wow, nature's fantastic." And I'm like, "Yay." It's like, it's great. Look around you. I just love it. So I'm super excited. These Northern Lights, it has been so much fun for so many people going outside and like looking out in the comet, people coming outside and like, "Oh, I saw a comet." It's like, I love that it's bringing people out and they're looking up and it's like, I don't know. I've seen some of these like cartoons and things where like, you see those people like almost drone like, and then somebody looks up and like suddenly their world has color and it's life. And it's like, it's so fulfilling to see other people having those moments. And I'm loving it. So that's all I was gonna hop on and say. Yay.
I'm just gonna hop on and say really quick. Um, there's some really cool apps, and I have one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a star constellation app, and you can just point it at whatever you want, and it'll tell you which constellation it is. So, the last few years, like learning the constellations has been one of my little side hobbies when I can see them. Um, but yeah, that app is super cool if anybody is interested in, having something that makes your life easier in that regard.
Can I pop back on really quick? Um, there was one thing I forgot I was gonna say. Actually, like the original intent. Uh, the meeting that we had as the guild the other night, and we were talking about like politics and stuff. It was so helpful for me because I have spent probably the past at least probably a month or two trying to figure out why I am so fearful and try to work through all of that. And within like 2 sentences, Maria was like, she like lit it all up. I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what this is." And as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh, because I had fear around my fear around my fear, and I was trying to unwind it all, and I just kept like running in circles with this whole fear thing. So as soon as Maria was like, "Oh, you're just being triggered because this," I was like, "That's exactly what this is," and I am living in fight or flight. And I was like, anyway. So I just wanted to say thank you to the group of people because you guys are so awesome that it still surprises me sometimes the things that everyone says and shares, and I just, it's like, you guys are fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah. It's been an interesting year for me, like with that, because I have anxiety, but yet I also like deeply feel that I'm like this awesome, like, being and like deserving of everything just because I'm present, because I was born, like my soul got to be incarnated, and how awesome is that? So like I feel that at the same time as like this very human experience where I have anxiety and, you know, yeah, still navigate like with fight or flight. And, but then agree, Alicia, just like having the community, like some of the chats that we've had, the perspective on some things like has shifted, and the idea that I would be over it someday and that I would be ascended to the point where I don't feel those things, I realize that wouldn't maybe be a human experience. And maybe that's, I don't know. Like, I don't, right. These are some things where I feel today, I feel okay with not having all the answers. There's times in my life when I really needed to know or wanted to know and wasn't getting the answer. But I feel okay that as navigating the human experience with the veil of forgetting, that there are some things that I'm not going to have the answers to, but I feel like I have enough information. Like I have anxiety that we're floating, like that the earth is floating in the middle of the universe. That gives me anxiety. I don't like heights. Like I'm like, does anyone else think about that? But sometimes like, you know, yeah, I don't know. Like I asked my partner the I'm like, do you think about that? Does that worry you? Like sometimes that gives me anxiety. He's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, sometimes I get anxiety thinking about us just floating. Like, you know, anyhow, just I'm just sharing what's in my brain. Ocean.
I too get anxiety about being on a rock floating through space. Um, and it's really been like this big question for me lately of like, why do I think being inside of a house will keep me safe from like everything outside of it, including like, space or like catastrophes. And then it also factors into where I want to move next. Like I keep saying I really want to live at the beach, but then I'm like, what if there's like, some big tsunami like the Cascadia or the Cascade like trench finally gets hit. Um and like I grew up in California where like earthquakes were like a really big thing. And like all these things outside of my control is why I lean so hard into alignment. It's like if it's aligned for me to go through any of these things that I have anxiety about, um, then I know that my guides will have my back through it. And I have a lot of evidence that I have made it 100% alive through everything that I have gone through that has been traumatic. Um, and that I just remind myself to come back to the present. And I'm like, yes, I am on a rock floating through space within a country that is constantly like fighting itself pretty much and projecting that onto everybody around it. Um, within like a smaller town even that doesn't embrace people like me very warmly, and then within a house where I don't feel aligned. um but then within myself, as I start cultivating this like alignment within my physical being, Um, and also the more stuff that I purge and get rid of, the more that I feel lighter, as if I will just float to the next place. Like that's like the most important thing because everything in my life so far has been like begrudging and heavy and uncertain. And so I'm like cultivating the feeling of lightness, which is like just as much floating as like the planet is doing on its own right now. And also magnets. Also magnets make me feel better because that's like the whole reason that we're floating is like magnets is, but you can physically see that work in like real time and that makes me feel better for some reason. So I don't know if that'll help you or not, but go ahead, Renee.
Um, so I mean, I like everyone else, I'm sure, has a lot of anxiety around politics right now, but I had this thought the other day that helped me, and I don't know if it'll help anyone else. And I was just thinking about how, um, Trump likes to present himself as this tough guy, this ultra masculine, like tough guy. And I just thought, if there was like a naked and afraid situation and we both got dropped off in the middle of the woods, like I would hate it, but I would be fine, because I have survival skills because I grew up in like one of the harshest environments in the world, and he would be instantly dead, like I like there's so many situations where if you just change a few parameters and tweak them, like I said, I would hate it, but I would be fine. I know how to build a shelter. I know how to hunt. I know how to do all of that stuff. Um, so sometimes like to empower myself, like I just like to come up with like these little scenarios, and I feel confident everyone here would also be fine. You know what I mean? One way or another, like we would all be fine. So um that's it's good for nothing, but it also made me feel better. So I'm gonna hop off.
Yes, so what Taryn in the chat was saying, yes, those are things that I've thought about it maybe for 3 days in a row. Now I have these times where that's what I think about. Like I literally am like, what if we just all start floating? And then I'll be like, well, everyone will all be doing it together. So there's that. And then, I won't care. To a point, it'll get to a point where I won't care. Yes. Queen Herbie says has like a Instagram which says like you're on a yeah, what Ocean said, you're on a rock, hurling through space. Uh she says a couple of things, but fear nothing, she says at the end, like Petra.
I just wanted to, I added a little thing from Reddit because I was like, I feel like this is a common fear, but I couldn't remember. So I Googled it because that's my job in this group is to be the little research nerd and be like, what does the internet say? Not like my job. That's just, this is what I find delight in and thus I do it. Because capitalism can suck it. But I think it's really interesting that it's such a universal thing. And I think sometimes when I think about, I mean, like, here's also, I was taught as a child to find such delight in space. Like, I think one of my earliest childhood memories is like, and like most vivid is like watching eclipses with my dad, like driving out of town and then going and setting up the telescope and him like getting his video recorder like hooked up to the telescope somehow and then like recording these eclipses. And he's such a gigantic nerd. And my parents did a lot of things wrong, but there were like a handful of things where I was like, hey, that was great. Good job on that. The like interest in space was one of those things. Because for me, I used to co-regulate with the sky a lot. And so that was a thing for me. And I think, but I also find it so fascinating when people are like, it's so overwhelming, because I think it's that, that like, it's the unknown. It's like weird. It's like, you can only conceptualize the rules, right? Like I liked what Ocean said about like the magnets and being like, okay, like this actually works because it's happening in my hands. Like this is real. Like gravity works. um and I think also as a scientist, I like the fear of like what happens if it just all stops is so intriguing to me, because I'm like, our planet would have to blow up for that to happen. Like that's not really like how it, like it's that's the beautiful thing about scientific constants, is like until acted upon usually by an outside force, they are in fact like well named as constants, which I think is kind of a beautiful thing, right? Like light is the same, and other things. And so I just wanted to share that because I think it's like I wanted to validate and be like, this is a very common fear about among people. And then the other piece, Renee, when you were talking about being squished in the bed, I like was bebopping around in my kitchen, and so I didn't get to type it in the chat. But there's this thing in somatics, and I'll like add the article. It's essentially this. I don't know if it's a practice. I don't know how to put it, but it's called containment, and it's essentially like the capacity to feel all the things that we are feeling, and sometimes like when we've had trauma or when we've been conditioned to like seek safety outside of ourselves, it can be really hard to feel our own edges. And so containment practices often involve like being like, this is where I end and this is where other people begin. And the physical practice of being like squished or compressed can really like add sensation to like that kind of a thing. So I think sometimes as sensory seeking creatures, we like that containment can feel good because you're like, this is me. Like I'm all squashed in this thing and I can feel all of me because all of me is squished. My organs are being like, ow, but also it feels good. And so I just wanted to add that as like just a point of kind of interest, I guess, because I love finding the definitions and words for things. It makes my brain so happy. And so I always like to share them with you guys. Anyway, that is all. I'm going to put that link in the thing. Okay, bye, friends.
I was watching a video yesterday, and it was interesting kind of tying into so like one of almost the one how do I say, it's up there for questions that we get, is how do you like navigate the world as an empath when like you walk into a room and you feel everybody's emotion. So what you were describing about the containment was also like a practice for that in a sense, and you can take it like various ways, but like this is what I'm actually feeling, this is where I end, and that's where somebody else begins to help differentiate like what am I actually feeling. So not only like physical but also like the as being like an empath or intuitive, and sometimes not knowing where your feelings start and where someone else's starts, your feelings end or someone else begins, whatever the phrase is. So I thought that was cool too, as like using that physical too to help with that differentiating and helping, or people practicing to then just be like, oh, that's not mine. Like I don't need to even do anything with that because it's actually not mine. That reminded me of that. So thanks.
Okay, so I thought about the whole like if we just randomly start floating, but then my brain was like, well, if I'm approaching it from the perspective of a witch, then well, like we are made of earth, like we are of the earth. Um, and also my brain wondered like if grounding was like um a practice that actually kept you on the ground. Um uh okay, I'm sorry. This is so ADHD of me, but like it can also keep you in the ground. When sometimes when I'm grounding, I will let myself feel like I'm fully sinking into the earth. And yes, we ground together for 70. That's true. Um, sometimes I will literally just look at her and be like, "Do you want to go ground?" And we will sit under the tree together. She will literally sit with me. It's amazing. And like that that feeling of like being like almost like being like buried, like I'm just literally covered in like dirt and like like as if my like the sensation sometimes is that there like I know this sounds creepy, but sometimes it feels like there's like a bug crawling on me or like it feels like I'm literally integrating with the earth in that moment. Um it's like a good containment, but also like an asthma. And also I find that um when I am I because I don't go into rooms with a lot of other people very often anymore. I get the feeling that I will be sooner rather than later. I will probably be around more people, but it's very likely that the people I will choose to be around in the future will be fellow witches. Um, but I find that approaching it uh with alchemy, can you relax? Thank you. Approaching it with alchemy of like if I am getting something, this is how I respond to that thing within myself because obviously that energy is like triggering me. Um and um Grounding that um can help me like navigate in a way that's authentic to me rather than in response to what I'm feeling from the room or um like in avoidance of what I don't want to feel about where I'm at or about who I'm with. But that's also like I'm not saying that I do that. You know, again, I'm not in rooms with other people very often. I do share space with somebody who does not emotionally regulate themselves. Um, and so I do practice that with them, but um and I'm finding that my inner child, like the way that I speak to them is like through compassion. Like it's like compassion is a grounding energy because it's accepting of all of the other energies and it says you're allowed to be here, but here are the boundaries of, how I will interact with you, if that makes sense. That's all my thoughts. Thanks.
Renee.
Um, so one of my hobbies is to look on Zillow Gone Wild at like all the crazy big houses and like there's like whole school buildings that are for sale and stuff. And I'm always like, which town? Like I just um that I like to daydream about that a lot, but it's really fun. But I did see like a school and I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be so fun to just be able to take over a whole school. I don't know why I'm thinking about that, but anyway, hop off.
Yeah, that comes up from time to time. There was a witch once that even bought the school. I don't know. Hopefully they'll come back someday and tell us what ended up happening. Also, Renee, the leaves, I used to also it was funny because there's like some childhood trauma stuff around like having to visit my dad on the weekends, and he lived in the country. And as I was walking in the woods today, like there was some of that came up because it just reminded me of like all the pine needles. But then like the leaves crunching was such a, I remember like being with my cousins and they would like bury me in the leaves, and something that we like still talk about, and that was such a fun time. So it was such a like a lot of like memories going on in the woods today. Ocean.
I forgot what I was going to say. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. It was about what you last said, or what you first said. I really need to write things down. I literally have a notebook next to me that I'm not utilizing. Um, which is super fun. Uh, way to test my intuition, I guess. Um, I will raise my hand if I remember. Go for it, Renee.
I also have these little daydreams where it's like I would love to have like a gymnasium sized room and just be able to put like altars all the way around it for everything, like anything and everything you could think of. And just, you know, I just think that'd be really fun. And I was just thinking, I've been thinking lately about like the gods behaving badly, and maybe also it's because I just took that monstrous feminine class, but just like how so many the mistreatment of of some characters through no actions of their own other than like existing, like Medusa, lead to this, absolutely devastating consequence. And um yeah, like I said, it just would be fun to have like altars to things that are a little outside the box and have like a nice big area where, you could just wander from place to place and appreciate them. One of my daydreams, popping off.
I remember. So we were talking about buying like a school or something like that. I've had some ideas on this that I just really want to put out there because um it excites me, and also, you know, whoever needs to hear this needs, to hear it. So uh I've had two different concepts. The first one has been like I've been really focused on my spa that I feel really called to like open or maintain or participate in or whatnot. And so I look at a lot of abandoned mansions for that, or even some like I even get inspiration sometimes from like brand new ones that are like millions and millions of dollars. But I'm like, if capitalism were not capitalism, then these spaces would be allocated for things like um whatever the vibe is, where that is at and what the vibe of the house is. um but then in terms of community, um yes, a school would be really cool. However, you could get Persephone, she wants to be a part of things, a hotel, and that would allow for individual living, and then you could also allocate like ballrooms and stuff as like learning like classrooms, and like create spaces that could be like movable for uh like different purposes, right? There'd be like moving parts to it. Um, Also, an abandoned mall. Actually, there's so many abandoned malls across America, and they already have food courts and like all the different, like shopping, like the little stores could either be like built like into like, like roommate situations, or they could be kept whole as like a whole family home situation. Um, and there would be like plenty of space to like, create classrooms out of some, or like if somebody wanted, specifically, a shop out of, their house or whatnot, then they could have like a shop house combo. Super like like something that you I don't know, there's a word for it, but something that you'd be able to make into anything. And then also apartment complexes, and there's literally so many abandoned neighborhoods around the country too. So like um because of like either like road issues or like builders, stop halfway, they lose funding, like part through like building everything and stuff. There's so much that is like ready to be reclaimed and refurbished and loved on. And with like with the way that we're all cultivating relationships with our homes and like the spirit of our homes and stuff, um, that can be done with any building. Um, And so when you're calling in alignment for a community, the spirit of the place that you want to live next is a part of that community. Um, and I also get this like feeling that like those spirits of the houses are like, or like I mean, obviously all spirits are connected, but like I get the feeling that if I told my current house how I like wanted to, like what would make me happier in my next living place, I think they'd be supportive of that. Like I think they would be like, yeah, I love that for you. My house is a very supportive. My house is named Tabitha. I don't know if I've ever talked about that. They're like, she's like gives this vibe of like an old lady who likes just sitting on her porch and watching all the kids across the street play and like waving at them as they go to school. And it seems like my house is someone who loves to be part of and observant of the community. Even the trees in my yard, like when I have connected with them, they're like they always show me the view from the very top. And I've even gotten views of like my trees like watching the fireworks shows, which apparently this town is obsessed with, because it feels like every other month there is a fireworks show happening somewhere around my house, which I am not a fan of personally. But the house and the trees seem to really love it, and like love the view and the participation energetically and stuff. um and they're super connected to the trees at the park across the street, and just yeah, in a community sort of way. That's where my thought train ends, so thank you. We have about 20 minutes left. If anybody had another rant or ramble or subject that they wanted to go off on, I can totally pick something at random too, if that feels aligned. I want to give space though in case anybody has like, excuse me, thoughts about what we just talked about. Go ahead, Renee.
Um, I was just thinking about the books I've been reading lately and how a lot of them are about plant magic, and how, like, if someone was to ask me, like, what's one of your favorite, magic subjects, like, I probably wouldn't say plant magic, but then I look at my bookshelf and there's like two shelves full of books about plants. um in the same way, when I was like in my early 20s, one of my friends was like, "You love lamps." I'm like, "I love lamps." I'm like, she's like, "Yeah, you like have all these lamps and cool lamps." And I'd never once like thought about it. And I was like, I do love lamps, but I've been kind of thinking about that too. Like I know I love plants, but also um I would say like 3 to 1, the magic books I have or collect are all about plants. And I'm not like really brave. Like, there's people that do stuff with plants that I'd never in my wildest dreams would ever mess with. Like, because we have like Amanita muscaria mushrooms up here. And this is, I guess, I didn't realize this. They only grow in certain climates. And I mean, they've been around my whole entire life. Um, and I know people that ingest them. Whereas I personally have a healthy fear of them, but also, so I've been reading some books about um just, like plants, dangerous plants. And I've realized how easily you could accidentally poison yourself with plants, because um there's a woman too, she was out like picking flowers up here, and she saw these really pretty purple flowers and she almost picked them, but she didn't. And then when she got home, she found out, like, if you even touch the plant, like it can, it has volatile oils that, like if you even like if you would have picked it, it would have at the very least probably like blistered her skin. And so just how important it is to realize like what plants you're messing with. And how during Victorian times there was this man, and he was a famous poet. I can't remember what his name is right now, but his kids made him like a sandwich for lunch, and he ate it. And then like an hour or so later, he started feeling strange. And he's like, what'd you make that sandwich out of? And they're like, "Oh, this lettuce we picked in the woods." And it was like, and it was like, he didn't tell them, but it was like a deadly, plant that killed him. So it's like, for as much as a relationship we have with plants and depend on them and eat vegetables and stuff, just how important it is to be able to recognize like what you are dealing with, and even to the point of touching. And which also, I just heard a story this summer about someone who, like, how adorable little fuzzy caterpillars are, you know like, and when I was a kid I was like caterpillar crazy, but there are certain fuzzy caterpillars, like if they fall on you or touch you, it's basically like getting stung by a jellyfish. And then it also made me realize, I know so much about my little micro environment that I live in, like, because I was brought up to know like what every kind of plant and sound and animal and all that stuff is. And just when people come here, they don't realize how completely merciless nature is. And it would be the same as me going to like a desert climate, right? Like I would know nothing. I would know nothing about what's around and what to touch and what not to touch, and all that. But uh somehow I got way off track of plants. But I've found some really, really, really cool books lately that I'll have to share on the app. But um I'm also really kind of fussy about which ones that I like and don't like. So, but it is just interesting, like things that you're like drawn to or called to, and you kind of don't realize it until someone points it out, or you kind of point it out to yourself. And um so I'm just kind of trying to figure out what that means for me, but I'll hop off.
I also love plants. I really appreciated some TikTok advice that I found from an herbalist who was like, learn all the toxic plants first because there's a lot less toxic plants than there are edible plants, and then um, you're safer to experiment if you know the toxic plants really, really well. Um, and Also on the book recommendation front, I really like Rosemary Gladstar's I think it's like Guide to Herbal Medicine or something like that. Um, she's one of the witches, one of the herbalists who um fought for fire cider to not be copyrighted because there was this company that was trying to like copyright the recipe for fire cider, and so no other witch would be able to sell it without essentially paying them like uh royalties, or risking copyright infringement, which is ridiculous because it's like ancient, medicine that's been passed down through cultures for centuries. And yeah, so plants are awesome. When I first got into herbalism, I bought all the herbs, and I still have a lot of the herbs because I wish I had, if I could go back in time and like when I wanted to start herbalism, I would tell myself to start with one herb and get to know it really well before moving on to another one. But at the time, I was facing a whole shelf like full of herbs, like double width, like jars of herbs that, was just like self-serve, like you could just scoop out like with a little scoop thing. They like provided scoops and baggies and little labels, and I was like, I'm just gonna get an ounce of everything, see what I can do with it. Or at least everything that I didn't recognize. But it's so funny because I actually wish I had gotten more of the herbs that I did recognize, because I didn't realize at the time how valuable it was to be able to get things that I was already using from a from the source, because the shop, it's in Cambria, California. It's called Spellbound, and most of their herbs are grown in their garden and dried by them, because out back they have a little like garden and you can walk through it. It's like a medicinal herb garden, and like there's different sections for that they decorated different ways. Like one's a little fairy section and one's like a hobbit section, and there's a little Alice in Wonderland section where they have like statues and decorations to like dress up the plants essentially. Yeah, it was like definitely one of my happy places. I would love to learn to do foraging, but I'm too scared because I just moved somewhere brand new. But I highly respect foragers. I think especially because I'm in Oregon now, um it wouldn't be that hard to find a like a foraging class or something, educational in that realm. But I feel like I'll have to move west before I do that because I'm a little more in the desert right now, which is so funny because that's like I grew up in the desert in California. And I thought when I moved to Oregon, I was like, yeah, trees and forests and stuff. And I actually ended up moving to the deserty part of Oregon. But it kind of feels like the threshold, like I just got like a little bit closer. And it's also a really good reminder for me that if I got all of my manifestations all at once, like if they all just came true tomorrow, then I probably emotionally, physically, and mentally would not be able to handle all of my like spiritual alignment. Like it would take some serious shadow work and integration to be able to like believe that those things were actually for me. Don't know how I got to this point. I feel like I had another point to make, but we are where we're at. So we have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has some final thoughts. or wants to weigh in about plants or say something completely different.
I think I find like I think sometimes we've talked about like, what it means to be a witch. And of course that's different for everybody, but I think sometimes we being maybe new and starting out and thinking like, oh, okay, witches are into plants, so I should do that. And that if that's not your thing, like that's okay. Because it's not like I don't think I'm ever going to be a forager, but I'm gonna find the best witchy forager and I'm gonna support the shit out of them. I just feel like that's kind of important too. Like that you don't have to always do the thing, but you can find, like, what Ocean said, like, you found that shop, and had you still lived there, you'd probably be going there, and I'm sure you'll come across another great shop. But like, like yeah, like I'd feel that way. Like, so people have asked me, like, because I love tea, and people are like, why don't you, do a blend or something? I'm like, that doesn't sound exciting to me. Like, I love drinking tea. Like, I love drinking someone else that has like put all of this magic into it and then being able to like do that. And there are other things that I am into that I do want to be more hands-on. But yeah, I just feel like, yeah, the and it like not knowing what is poisonous, what's not. Like, I love being in the woods, but I'm like not touching anything. I stay on the path. I'm not like exploring. Did have a really bad experience with poison ivy when I was young. I had it everywhere, including inside my nose. I was literally standing in it. So, I mean, but that's part of it. I think it's working through that trauma. Little shadow work there as well. But yeah, I love finding those people that are super passionate. Like the place I get my tea from, like the tea that I just got, if I had to like with like what I kind of wanted with some of like the health stuff going on for me and like my flavor, like this tea just arrived like at my door because I have like a subscription and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So that's like feel like that's super magical and that stuff happens too. So I'm just shooting the shit until if anyone else wants to say anything, of course, pop in.
I totally get that because like as a punk rock kid, like I used to cut and dye my own hair, and like now as an adult, I'm like, there are people that can do this perfectly. Like, why am I doing this to myself? Like there are certain things where yes, I understand. Like it's like there's people that are experts that you can support, and you know also with the tea, I have like daydreams too about like I'm gonna make my own blend of tea, and but then kind of like what Maria said, like I have a tea that I think is like the perfect tea already, that I love so much. It's like, well, I'm not gonna do better than this, so why don't I just enjoy this and redirect my energy towards something that I'm actually good at.
Or that you feel excited, like that at least kind of excites you when you're doing it, right? Like that's the whole thing.
I think seasonally too, there are things like in the summer, like I don't knit and crochet, but in the winter, like you start to like feel it coming on. So it is interesting that there's things you can be really passionate about and enjoy, but they're almost like a seasonal activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I I feel the opposite about mead than I do tea because I like drinking tea, but I don't feel good at making it. But with mead, I had so much fun making mulberry mead for the uh, second autumnal convergence. And it felt really good when people like liked it. And I tried it, but I'm not like a big alcohol person. But I do feel like I would like enjoy making like mead like in the future. I always imagine wherever I move, I would like create a relationship with whatever like I'm always imagining there being like an apple tree where I live. Um and then I also have a small mulberry tree that I was able to dig up out of the yard that's actually surviving. That I'm hoping will make it through winter because I would love to like take it with me where I go next. And also I love the idea of like getting like fresh like fruit from like other witches and like making mead and then giving like the mead from like the fruit they gave me like a full circle would be like super cool. Um, and I wanted to say something else about something you said, Renee. Uh, shoot, the memory is not remembering, but that's okay. Definitely been.
I think mead is like one of the most magical things. Like I like during Game of Thrones, my husband and I used to drink mead, and it like it feels like it just doesn't it hits different, because I'm not a big alcohol drinker either, but like mead is definitely one of those things that can enhance certain activities, and I'm kind of in awe that you're making it because it does feel like a super magical potion and like an ancient magical potion.
It really does feel that way. In fact, when I was letting it like, brew and do its thing, I literally had it on my altar for its like sitting and there's something about the sugar from fruit that just hits differently than like the sugar and other alcohol. Because like I love like whenever I did drink alcohol, I like the fruity stuff. Like it was easier to drink even though it gave me like a way worse hangover. But like the sugar from fruit and then uh the honey, I also got local honey that was like, from the area that I'm in because I tried to make it like community based ingredients. Yeah, it really did feel super magical. Oh my gosh. Okay. My favorite quote uh that stuck with me from the autumnal convergence was when we were on a walk on this cute little path through the woods. And I was like not feeling great about the leaves touching me, so I was like trying to like slide like through them kind of like sideways at some points. And Maria said, "Yeah, I haven't done enough shadow work to let the leaves touch me." And I just found it so relatable as somebody who struggles with their like sensory experience. So, a little fun quote to end the meeting on. Yes. So real. Well, thank you everybody. This has been such an amazing sass, and I know we're all tired and it's been like a really intense week. So I appreciate you all for being here and hanging out and contributing. Have a good Sunday. Make sure you guys rest. Cocoon if you must. Bye.
Bye bye.